I don't think anybody's normal, but I've only just come to this conclusion in very recent times.
The neurodivergent umbrella is huge. I don't think that there is a normal, but we always build everything to some sort of standard. I think everybody has a different thing. So finding like, what's the one that works for you? What's the gift for you that's in this? And helping them find the silver linings while also still supporting and acknowledging the parts that are hard.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network on ESPN Richmond 106.1 and Choice 105.3.
Welcome back to another episode of America's Healthiest City. I'm your host, Will Melton. This is part of the Mike King Biz Radio Network. We air this show every Thursday at 6 a.m., so please tune in here or at espnrichmond.com to catch our show live. You can also catch us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, any place on socials, and we'll have this show in podcast format in short order. Today in the studio, I have Casey Jordan. She is a neurodivergent coach. I'm super excited about this conversation, and you'll find out more why here in a minute. But without further ado, Casey, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As I said, I'm excited about this. I would consider myself to be neurodivergent, but I think we'll have a fun conversation about what that means and you know, whether there's such a thing as normal, I think is where I want to go. But let's tell us a little bit about you. I want to start out like we do everybody. Are you a native to Richmond, or did you come here at some point? I know the answer.
Yeah, I moved here May of 2020, right in the height of all the quarantines and lockdowns. Yeah.
So you came here and made a bunch of friends really fast.
Really set my roots and
And you came from Montana, is that right? Okay. So why Richmond and what? Yeah.
My husband's work, he opened an office for his company down here, and he and I were looking for a little bit of adventure in life, and we said, what the heck, and volunteered to be the ones to open the office and made the move.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. And so you already doing this kind of work before you moved to Richmond? And
I've been doing coaching work in various capacities for about a decade now, but I wasn't into the neurodivergent coaching until about the last year and a half.
Okay. So so you've been in Richmond now since 2020, so it's almost 4 years or just about over 4 years, just over 4 years. What's been your thoughts so far? I mean, it's a whole different place than Billings, Montana.
It is for somebody born, and I'm born and raised in Montana, so that's 35 years of what I know. I love it. I love the culture, the community, the literal, like the trees. Eastern Montana is not green or very pretty. So like just the lushness of it. So far, I haven't really found much I don't like except the humidity.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I picked up an RV during the pandemic because we couldn't do our honeymoon to Milan, and we've knocked down many estates since then. But Montana was one place that we went, and every time in the summer when you come back across the mountains, it's like, what changed?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
So so you've been here for 4 years. What prior to being in Richmond, what got you into coaching? What has been your motivation for helping other people?
Yeah. So I'm going to give the super condensed version of this, but back in 2004, I was wounded in a roadside bombing in Iraq. I was there serving with the U.S. military, and I sustained a traumatic brain injury, was later diagnosed with PTSD, and also some physical joint and nerve damage, some permanent physical injuries. Skip ahead a bunch of years, I decided I want to work with other people. I wanted to help give back to all the therapists that helped get me on my feet again. And so I got my master's in rehabilitation and mental health counseling. And around the time that I was kind of finishing my training and starting to work as a therapist, I realized I was not fully dealing with my own stuff enough yet, and I was really burnt out. And so my husband and I made the decision for me to quit working for a while, put myself first, get back on my feet. And then from there, I decided to do my own thing. So I started with CrossFit coaching and nutrition coaching, weightlift coaching. And then there's such a unspoken like mental component to that. That was the part I really loved with my athletes. And I just kind of kept getting pulled back to a mental health kind of avenue. And the life coaching and the neurodivergent coaching made the most sense. And so about a year and a half ago, I kind of tripped over it via TikTok, and also realizing that I have ADHD and was like, this is it. And really just love kind of where I've settled in now.
So I want to talk about a few things, and we'll kind of bounce around. I definitely want to hit on the part about having the luxury to take time off, and not everybody has that. So we'll touch on that later. But talk a little bit about your military service. I saw that you were a military police officer. My father was the same when he was in Korea. So I found that connection. Tell us a little bit about what drove you to do that in the first place, and just that experience overall?
Honestly, I joined the military to pay for college. I enlisted before September 11th, before the terrorist attacks, into a peacetime military. I was 17. I was looking how am I going to pay for college? And it's right before my senior year of high school. So I joined in July, and then 9/11 was just a few months later. And so it instantly shifted everything that I was kind of planning for and expecting. And I finished high school, and right after high school, went and did my military schools and came home. And about 2 months later, our unit got activated. I was Montana National Guard, and we got activated and spent about a year in Baghdad and a couple more years in the military after I got home, but no more deployments. And overall, it's such a mixed experience. Like, obviously, there's parts of it that are incredibly like traumatic and not fun and intense. And there's a lot of just like sitting around doing nothing. But there's also like, we had a lot of fun, like in certain parts of our job, and getting to live in Baghdad. And we had the opportunity to interact with people through the police department. We got to know some of our police officers, which was such a treat. Getting to like break feast with them for Ramadan and things like that was such a unique experience. And while I don't love what I went through, I wouldn't be who I am without it. So I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, my best friend's a Army captain, and he's stationed in Colorado Springs, and I know his experience has been similar to what you described, but also it's pulled him. He stayed in, and he's still doing it, and they're going to keep convincing him to stay, I think.
Yeah. But I had planned on being career military, and right about the time my enlistment was coming up, we were getting ready to head to Afghanistan, and my mom said, if you sign those re-enlistment papers, I'm divorcing you. Deal. Which was the right choice. I really wasn't ready for another deployment. But
well, I read in Never Split the Difference, a book about negotiation, that the jugular for anybody is the mom. Mom,
Yep.
Mom opens up anything that we need.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about your transition into this space. So you're not the first coach that I've spoken to that started in the fitness space and then really saw that. My own fitness coach, we had the similar conversation when he came into the studio. So you got into neurodivergent coaching, you said, about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Health and fitness to coaching in general to very specific form of coaching. What motivated you to choose that? And tell us how it's been.
Been amazing. One of the big motivations is I kept seeing a big gap in just support for neurodivergent adults. And there is a rapidly growing wave of especially like elder millennials and young Gen Xers who were undiagnosed their whole life. And now 30, 40, 50 years older, finding out they have autism and or ADHD. Sometimes a lot of them already know that they have PTSD and anxiety and depression. And everything they thought they knew about themselves and life just got upended. And there was kind of this gap of a lot of the ADHD and autism resources are for children, or they only focus on that disorder. And I saw the space for myself with the brain injury and the PTSD, like these all play off of each other. And I wanted to be able to come in and give that support of like, how do we start to untangle all the messaging you get from society about being lazy or too loud or too weird or dumb, and like, all of those messages get internalized, and then you find out it's actually because you have ADHD and your brain just doesn't fit in the like modern school system. So part of my job is helping people like undo all of that messaging and learn new stories about themselves. And part of my job is literal strategies and tools. How do we help you show up to work on time and get projects done without having to pull all-nighters at 40 years old, that kind of stuff. And I love the challenge every client brings, because even though every single one of my clients has autism and or ADHD, they also have their own life experiences. And they say, like, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so I love the diversity that all my clients bring and the new challenges they bring. And when the light bulb clicks, I had a client this morning and I said something and you just see the relief. And she was like, oh, you mean that's not true? And it was just like, I just live for those moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I, as somebody who knew that I struggled and didn't have some skills or the ability to present as my peers did, I maybe was frustrated by that. I maybe wanted to be more like them. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that I realized that, oh, wait, like you're probably ADHD and you should go see a doctor and see what they have to say about it. In the time since, I did a brief a little bit of non-stimulant medication, and it didn't work for me. It wasn't enough. And I think eventually I just didn't want to take medicine every day.
Yeah.
So, but in the time since, I've come to learn that my brain being different has been a tremendous gift. And for a lot of reasons that we can get into. But tell me a little bit about the experience you have with clients going from seeing their challenges as a disability, perhaps. Does everybody come around eventually to kind of seeing it as a gift, or is there some mix of that? Yeah,
a mix, and I firmly believe there's a mix too, because the reality is the way our society is structured, certain elements of most mental health neurodivergent needs don't fit in. And so like if you have to interact with the world outside of your house, at some point you will probably be disabled in some capacity. That doesn't mean you can't find accommodations, you can't learn to live within that and work within that, but there is still that balance. And so like I never want to take that away from them, but then also helping them find their strengths. Like the amount of entrepreneurs who have ADHD, like it's astronomical compared to the general population, because I think we have this like, I personally have this kind of ability to see things from like 100 different perspectives and really see outside the box. And like, so helping my clients find what their special trait is, because I think everybody has a different thing. And so finding like, what's the one that works for you? What's the gift for you that's in this? And helping them find the silver linings while also still supporting and acknowledging the parts that are hard.
Well, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this when we come right back. We'll take a quick break.
Thank you for listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network.
Welcome back to the show. If you're tuning in to America's Healthiest City for the very first time, please visit americashealthiestcity.com to learn about our 10-year community partnership to make Richmond, the entire region, the healthiest in America by 2033. We have a place where companies can sign up to be ambassadors to help us with this mission. We have a place where people can submit ideas to our ideas board. And if you just want to peruse the ideas and leave some comments behind, we welcome that as well. We're in the studio today with Casey Jordan. She is a neurodivergent coach. And we're having a wonderful conversation about those of us who have brains that operate maybe just a little bit differently than society kind of paints a picture for. So I want to talk about that idea of normal. Casey's, I don't think anybody's normal, but I've only just come to this conclusion in very recent times. You work with a lot of different people. You've worked with people that didn't identify as neurodivergent before. What is your take on this front of this expectation that there is a normal classification of what it's like to be a human being in our society?
Yeah, I think like a lot of things, I agree that there probably isn't a normal, but we have picked a particular baseline of kind of what has been deemed socially acceptable, what has been deemed normal, and without getting like too political, like white patriarchal, like that's where it kind of stems from. And so that's been deemed normal, but even within that, there's still a lot of diversity. And like when we talk, the neurodivergent umbrella is huge. I mean, it's anxiety, depression, the autism, ADHD, it's all sorts of disorders. And so a lot of people have little components of these. And so I don't think that there is a normal, but we always build everything to some sort of standard. And now you could build something to a standard that is completely neurodivergent friendly, but even that, there isn't like a single neurodivergent commonality. And so, yeah, I don't think there's necessarily is a normal, but the reality is like that's how society's been built. So we have to play the game until society adapts enough that we see the neurodivergence and the differences and can integrate them easier.
So we can't have this conversation without getting somewhat political. So I want to talk about the education front and this space that we create for people to learn and grow. If we have this faction of people that fit into that, quote unquote, normal society, I fear that we're just training people to kind of fit into this box and not discover their own talents because they're not forced to cope with, the world as we know it. I've found, and kind of reflecting on my life and just as early as today, when I was 3 years old, I learned how to tie my shoes with the bunny ears method because I couldn't learn the loop, swoop, and pull. And to this day, people laugh at me when they see me tie my shoes, but it works for me. It's easier than doing the other way. And I've done that with algebra and other things that I've had to learn my way of learning how to do things. And I've met other people that struggled. And when they learned my way, it was easy for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was a statement, not a question. But
I agree. Like, I think school system employment settings, we need more flexibility. We need more options. Like, I watch this. I don't have kids, but I watch this Discord on the internet about like Common Core math. And like when I see examples of Common Core math, it instantly makes sense to me. I struggled through every ounce of math I ever took. Kindergarten through college, I had tutors to get through math classes. And now at 40 years old, I see Common Core and I'm like, oh, well, now I know how to do that in my head. And like, I don't think it's necessarily a right or a wrong, but we need more options. Some kids learn more visually. Some kids learn more tactilely. I was just discussing with my husband the other day. I was like, can you learn just from a lecture or do you need to see someone do it? He's like, no, I need to do it myself. And like, we need to create systems where when we're training employees, when we're training kids, try writing right-handed. Okay, now try writing left-handed. Which feels better to you? And like, let us figure out which way to tie your shoes feels better. Oh, you're struggling? Let's try this version. And normalize a variety of options to tackle. Like, that's my favorite thing. My clients ask me, they're like, well, what's the answer? I'm like, best news, worst news ever. There's no right answer. Like, there are a million ways to get to pretty much any end point. What's the one that feels best to you?
Yeah. So I have, obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, but as we go about the world, it's not going to be easy to change things. We can start to normalize things and maybe not use that word, but we can introduce these ideas. But for those of us who struggle, and for folks who are maybe discovering right away, that they have a challenge. I found you through Instagram. I found you to be calm and confident, but you also have some really great ideas. What are maybe some of the challenges that your clients have experienced, like some of the walls that they hit up against, and maybe some anecdotes of pathways that they found to overcome those and what it looks like for them on the other side?
Oh man, that's a big question. The one I see a lot with my clients, because I do work with like mostly folks in their 30s and 40s, is employment stuff. Is they're hitting this wall where they have to stay employed. Like, we got bills to pay, we have reality. And you even kind of referenced that the fact that I was able to kind of take a break when I hit burnout. Like, I am incredibly privileged to be able to just quit my job and wait and see what happened. And I do have a few clients we've been able to arrange for them to do kind of sabbaticals and do some deep recovery. But a lot of folks were trying to learn new skills about themselves, navigate burnout from like suppressing these natural things about themselves for decades, and keep a job. And so there's a lot of like multi-layered approaches into how do you deal with a office building with bright lights, and how do you ask for accommodations from a boss to maybe wear sunglasses or have a desk lamp and turn the light off over your cubicle. And so there's a lot of brainstorming of like what's going to work within the structure of the environments that you have to stay in to help take care of your nervous system as much as possible. And it just, once we hit that, it's magical. This morning I had a client, we've been dealing with some boundaries on some family issues, and she messaged me like on my way here, and she's like, I stood up for myself. And she sent me the text thread. She's like, this is what I said, and this is how they replied. And it's like so beautiful to see her confidence and relief that like she can do this. Mm-hmm. And like it doesn't have to stay this way forever. It can be this way. That's the whole game.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking back to your comment about how there are a lot of ADHD entrepreneurs. I've worked for myself since I was 20 years old. I'm 39 now. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm convinced that I don't want to work for other. I say I don't want to work for other people. I can't work for other people because I see all the problems and they don't let me fix them. But the reality is I would be a poor performer working for somebody else based on what I know my standards to be. But in this role of entrepreneurship, I get to choose what I do every day and choose the things that make me feel good, but that still have the potential to be productive activities. Most people don't have that ability, but I'm curious, have you seen people who have been able to transition into entrepreneurship as a way to cope with, what it is that they're facing?
Yeah, I have a couple of clients who've transferred completely into entrepreneurship, a couple who we've changed industry because we just realized the industry they're in is the wrong fit at this point in their life. I have a client who, the first call, she's like, do I quit my job and start my own business, or do I stay at the job? And recently we decided like she's going to hang tight a little longer at the business because it's kind of the devil, and like, let's deal with some of the other like burnout stuff and make sure you're like on your best footing possible to come into entrepreneurship. But I think I love being an entrepreneur. I wouldn't have it any other way either. So I think when people ask me that, I definitely am a little biased to be like, yes, come to this side. So I definitely have multiple clients where that's the decision we've been able to make.
I don't know that I've experienced this so much, but I imagine that autism and attention deficit disorder have real challenges for relationships. Have you seen that? And have you seen people find ways to maybe be better communicators or to express the challenges that they face so that they can be on the same level with their partner?
100%, especially with my late diagnosed client. A lot of times they don't have the language even for themselves of what their needs are. And so they're having meltdowns, they're shutting down, they're getting in these fights, not knowing what the root of it is. And when we help them find the language for themselves, then we can use that language with our partner. And my husband is as quote unquote normal as they get. He's never dealt with anxiety or depression or PTSD. Definitely has never had a brain injury. Like, he doesn't understand how my brain works, but we have a way to being able to communicate to each other. And I can say, this is what I need from you right now, or I need some space, or he's gotten good at even anticipating my needs, and he'll jump in kind of before I even start to fall apart. And so that's definitely a big part of, once the client can figure out what the need is, then helping them find the words to explain that and ask for that support from somebody else. And then there's also the dynamic of a lot of folks who are finding me found out they were autistic or ADHD because their kid got diagnosed. And so there's the combo also of how do you parent a neurodivergent kiddo as you're going through your own neurodivergence? That's not my specialty, but I definitely have helped some families through that too.
I talked to somebody just the other day who said that her and her husband are both ADHD, and that has been challenging at times.
Yeah.
But they've found a way to make it work.
Yep.
So there's so much that we could talk about here, but in the next segment, I want to spend some time talking about things that we can be thinking about as a community, and ways that we can address perhaps some of the stressors that are coming as a result of AI and change and some of these other things. So we'll come back in just a minute and have that conversation.
Thank you for listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network.
Welcome back. This is America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. We are in the studio today with Casey Jordan, a neurodivergent coach, and we're having a really lively conversation about folks with brains that are just a bit different. In some cases, very different. But I think what we were getting to is this world is changing before us, for everybody, not just for those of us with neurodivergent brains. What kind of things are you experiencing? What kind of things are you thinking about as people face stress and anxiety and depression as a result of sort of this societal shift that is quite tectonic, I think?
I think one of the best and worst is our connectivity. It can be really easy to fall into the rabbit hole of doom scrolling and getting focused on how awful everything is, or kind of shutting down and pulling away from the world. But there are so many resources, literally at your fingertips now, of being able to Google ways to manage X and get ideas. You kind of mentioned AI. I refer my clients to ChatGPT quite often. I'm like, hey, have chat help you brainstorm. Or if you don't know how to say something professionally and you're just only coming at it from the angry point, ask ChatGPT to reword it for you in a way that's more professional. And teaching folks how to kind of use this connectivity in a way that is advantageous to learning about themselves, to finding more resources, to finding jobs, like we were just kind of talking about. Everything is shifting, but there's so much information. It's all right there. It's accessible to anybody. How do you use that as best as possible is the real magic trick.
Yeah, I feel like I unlocked something in my brain when ChatGPT came out and I started using it. I was all of a sudden able to go down every rabbit hole that my brain wanted to go down and get to the end, because sometimes an idea won't stop until you get to the end. And maybe 100%. That's the end of it, and sometimes it takes you forward. But you said connectivity, and I think about connectivity, coming from the IT world, certainly see it in a technological sense, but in a human sense, I wonder what your thoughts are on the importance of being social and connecting with other people, and how we use that lesson to maybe sometimes take us out of the depths, or when we get far away from people, what tools we might have available to us to remember that this is good for us.
Yeah, I think that human connection is so important. Like, we are anthropologically designed to be creatures that rely on each other. And I think sometimes, especially with neurodivergent folks, our desire is to pull away. Like, a lot of us label ourselves as introverts. We have sensory issues. People, like, being around people is exhausting, but the reality is we need it. And so, like, when I teach about self-care, I talk about social self-care. And so making sure that you not only take time to rest from people after you've had like a family reunion, yes, take a couple days away from everybody. But if you're feeling really stuck in like the deep, dark bads, this is the time to reach out to people. This is the time to call your best friend, whether that's FaceTime and Zoom or a real life get together if you can. I recently have started using Meetup to find some like local groups that are doing things I'm already interested in that I can just kind of show up and be on the edge of and like be around people without having to interact. Or some of them I've started making some really good friends. And so, yeah, there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think at some point, a lot of us do need people, but it also kind of conflicts with some of like our neurodivergent needs. And so like being able to see and balance that.
Yeah, I was thinking back to the reason why they call it a lifeline on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? Who are you going to call when you're in dire straits and you need serious help?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Richmond specifically. I think Richmond's certainly changing a lot, and there are some economic pressures and certainly opportunities as well. Do you have any specific ideas on ways that people here locally can think about other people who may not be experiencing life the same way as them, or just ways that we can all come together to think about how we become healthier? I mean, it's not always going to be that we get skinnier or that we get more fit, but there's this whole societal health that we've got to think about.
Yeah, I think these conversations are the first place, is having the openness to explore. If you don't know what the word neurodivergent means, like hang tight, like go back and listen to this whole interview again, is explore what these things mean so that you can start to have a sense of it. And then also, like, as we do community things, building them, a lot of times when we talk about like DEI, like diversity, equity, inclusion, we talk about physical disabilities and visible disabilities. And absolutely, we need to be talking about those, but we're missing a lot of invisible disabilities. And so if you're hosting an event, if you're running a conference, having a sensory room, a place where the lights are low, it's quiet, maybe some comfy chairs that people can kind of pull out and recharge. I went to an event, and they actually, for the closing event of this like 3-day conference, they had a big party. A lot of conferences kind of do. And they labeled it extrovert and introvert side of the party. And so on one side, it's flashing lights, karaoke, a DJ, like it is a party. And then in this other room, it was soft lights, soft music, comfy chairs, quiet conversation, connection, and like very, for most of us, neurodivergent friendly, like looking at kind of who was in which room, is being able to just see that there's not, I said it before, there's not one right way to do any of this. And so starting to ask questions and look at ways that are different from how we've already been doing it.
Well, I love that idea and example. I can see myself thriving in both of those environments, and so I want to go to the next event that's like that.
Yep.
Well, something else that we ask everybody, and we never have enough time to talk as deeply as I want to talk about these subjects, so we'll have to have you back. But, who's somebody else out there in the community of Richmond that is doing good work that you think we should have a conversation with?
I am a big fan of Rachel Cook.
Okay.
She's a local business owner, and the forefront of her business is doing business in a way that is healthy and sustainable, and also promoting women in leadership and getting more like women who are making lots of money and doing lots of good.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to meet her, and I hope she'll say yes to my invitation.
Yeah.
Lastly, for the folks out there listening, how can people find you? And I take it you're open to be booked?
Absolutely. Yes, I do have some one-on-one spots. Best way to find me is TikTok, Instagram. It's at Casey Jordan. My website is caseyjordan.com. Look me up, and I'm always open to hit me up with a message, say hi, give me a follow.
Well, thanks for sharing with our listeners today, and for having a conversation with me. I was a special topic for me, and a really good conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
This was America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. Catch us each Thursday at 6 a.m. on the network. You can also catch this show live on LinkedIn and YouTube streaming at the same time every week. We'll catch you next week.